This is the Almost Daily Zencast. Hello and namaste. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I am your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's get started.
Hello and namaste, my friends and listeners. It is I, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, your humble host of the Almost Daily Zencast. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat, like I should not have started the podcast right this second. So if you randomly encounter really prolonged silences, especially during the first half of this new episode, I apologize. It's that I'm muting the microphone so that I may hack my brains out a little to clear this tickle out of the back of my throat. I hope all is well with you, my friends and internet audience. Things have been interestingly in transition for me in my fictional real life as well as my literal real life. But isn't that always the case? So I have been on a bit of a hiatus, mostly due to the fact that I was quite busy doing some theater work at my day job, as I like to call it, and that keeps me busy enough on any given day that I'm working that I can't sit down to get it together to do a podcast. And I was, doing that, plus a few other things. Some interesting announcements coming up, by the way, folks. Indeed. Stay tuned. I don't want to just tease your mind and then move on. But let's touch on today's direct and obvious theme, the new moon. Now, you all hopefully have some kind of internet searchy thing at your disposal, so you can go and read up on your preferred interpretation. I'm just going to hit on a couple of surface things as seen at the very beginning of what Google estimates to be over 770,000 search results to the phrase new moon meaning from Wikipedia. In astronomy, the new moon is the first lunar phase when the moon and the sun have the same ecliptic longitude. At this phase, the lunar disk is not visible to the unaided eye, except when silhouetted during a solar eclipse. A lunatic or synodic month is the average time from one new moon to the next. Under the Department of People also ask, what does the new moon symbolize? Google tells us, as the first phase of the new moon phase holds a special meaning for cultures around the world. It is often viewed as a symbol of new beginnings. This magical phase provides a reset where goals are renewed, desires are set, and new intentions made. That is pulled from a guide to the significance of the new moon phase, moonglow.com. So, those are two sort of general statements about the new moon, and you can get into really squirrely specifics, right? With anything, as with any of it. But in the simplest of terms, one can address the moon as a spiritual facilitator, an ally, and even a sort of guide to when synchronicities and timings are in good alignment. I humbly propose to you that with a personal and contemplative or meditative relationship with the moon itself, by that I mean it's one thing to know a lot about the moon because you've read a lot of blog pages and compared and contrast things and have decided what you think is true, and another to spend time outdoors at night looking at the moon. And I humbly suggest to you that as is it Peanuts or is it what's his name? The tiger, the stuffed tiger and the kid, not Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, but oh god, I can't believe I can't remember the name of this comic. Insert name here, because I know it, I just can't pull it right this second out of my, I didn't prepare notes or anything, so I can't pull it out of my ass. One of their more profound statements in a singular image, I loved that strip, by the way, even though I can't remember its name, and I used to have, I may still have somewhere, perhaps in a box in the garage, unfortunately, a compendium book of some of that artist's early work. That artist's name is also totally not accessible to me at this moment because it's an ad hoc thing. I didn't prepare notes. I should have, right? Should have thought through. But Calvin and Hobbes. Thank you, memory. Slow recall there. No artist's name yet, but perhaps it'll rise from the depths in a moment or two. But one of their more profound panels ever, just singular, here's an image, it's them like sitting out, presumably in the kid's backyard. Is it Calvin or is it Hobbes? I forget which one's which. I believe Hobbes is the tiger. I could be wrong though, right? The Calvin could be the tiger and the kid's name could be something Hobbes. Or Hobbes something. Who knows? Whatever. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. They're sitting out in what looks like the grass of the backyard and looking up at the moon. They may be somewhere else. They may be camping or something. I don't know. Are there trees in the drawing? I can't remember. And the statement simply says, if more people simply spent some time looking at the night sky, the world would be a better place. And to be quite honest, I believe that to be true, no matter how kooky sounding it may sound. So, I'm not here to explain to you the moon phases necessarily. You've got the internet. Learn all about it. Read about all the different cultures and how they interpret the moon. But come full circle and set aside all that internet time and sacrifice some of it, dare I say, in order to schedule a visiting relationship, a visual eye contact relationship with the moon. Why is that important? I don't know, because we all complain about feeling disconnected from nature. And let me tell you, going camping more often is not necessarily the solution. Because I know plenty of people who go camping 3-4 times a year and are still severely disconnected from nature, right? No offense to hardcore fishing and outdoors enthusiasts, but even in the arena of being or attempting to connect with nature, there are, or might be, theoretically speaking, because I'm sitting on my ass in my office, right, in my home office, speculating about this. But this is, of course, a lifetime of experience and research. Not that I'm that smart or anything, but there are many levels, I dare say, to the ways in which we might, as individuals and as a collective, relate to nature and all of that which we call nature. One of the more profound things floating around the internet these days as a meme, because yes, indeed, while many memes are just endorsing and or facilitating bogus news, fake news, or the proliferation of us versus themist thinking, which is at the core of the entire agenda behind the fake news industries, right? Never mind. Well, we can put a pin in that and get back to it in some upcoming Good Morning Trumptopia episode. But nature, one of the more profound things floating around the internet right now, that I think actually points to a real thing as opposed to a distractionary thing, is the point I was trying to get across, is the one about being disconnected from nature truly means, on many levels, to be genuinely and sort of unconsciously or almost literally consciously disconnected from our own selves as individuals. And because I'm a kookmeyer, as I've been informed multiple times, you kookmeyer, I would append that it's not only ourselves, but the species as a collective also, right? That those two things are not mutually exclusive. That as much as self-care for any one of us as an individual is important, between, whoever is taking the time to do some self-care, that's important for them. It is also, there's a whole related networked level of phenomena that's similar and equivalent for the species as a collective. So I digress. We are disconnected from ourselves. Because why? How does that saying go? We are ourselves an innate, organic, inseparable. This is not what the text says, but this is how I feel it, how I would express it, and how I have expressed it in my own memeing and my own philosophizing through words and image. But we are inseparable from that which we call nature. No matter how disconnected we might feel, we are itself being, a being of nature. We are ourselves, as individuals and collectives, a form or expression of that which we would call nature. We just have the ability to create mental divisions that feel very real and very impactful. One way to heal those programmed boundaries, that inherited disconnection, is to make enough time to relate to the elements, the world as it actually unfolds before you. Not as someone tells you about it. Don't praise or worship some construction of some cosmology based on what I ramble about, right? That's not what I've ever been after. I think I've made that disclaimer plenty in the past. And don't just buy into anyone else's cosmology or model of the universe or model of nature. Get out there, disconnect from the thing you're using to connect to me. Not right this second, of course. Hear me out and check out the podcast a bit, but schedule that time. Make that time to step outside, even though you don't really want to go outside. Right? And look at the sky. If you live in a neighborhood where you worry about your safety, open a window and just take in the outside air and look up at the stars, etc. If you live in a densely populated area and you're in a big building, you're in a big high rise, safely and carefully utilize the window, or go to a place where you can, visit a rooftop park or community garden that's open at night and is safe and secure. I don't know. There's plenty of instances in contexts that people might find themselves that they'd be like almost laughing, almost jokingly laughing at themselves or at me for suggesting to go outside, right? Because it might be very difficult or challenging to just get a glimpse of the moon. But there you go. If you can, safely and securely and without putting yourself in any danger, get yourself outdoors with a clear view of the moon as it grows through its phases. Check in every other day. Take a moment while you're driving around. Do you commute in the evening? Get used to more consciously relating to the moon, not just on any given evening, but through time, right? For a long time in my personal life, something I've done is always say hello to the moon. And if I'm going through a difficult time, a challenging time, a transitional time, a time in which I'm using lots of energy or in which I need energy, etc., etc., if I'm going through a spiritual time, not only will I take that moment to say hello to the moon, I'll make an extra moment available to myself somehow to just sit and make eye contact with and be consciously aware of my breathing, and be as contemplative and meditatively receptive. If that's a real way to conjugate those words. If I can be in a receptive, contemplative, meditative frame of mind in which I am cultivating no mind, right? With deep, soul-penetrating eye contact to the moon. Now, some people might think that's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because the moon has no eyes, but just pretend it's a face and look at it. Turning to a device resource that you can use, I give a thumbs up endorsement to Simple Moon Phase Calendar. And for those who are not accustomed, like I wasn't, although I've always loved the moon and I've always very sort of innocently and youthfully and in spiritual awe revered the moon and spoke to the moon like one might speak to pets or houseplants. I've always very simply said, "Hello, moon," whenever I've noticed that I am in eyesight of the moon, and have made it a lifelong practice. And it's silly and nonsensical, but I digress. This app is a simple, straightforward moon calendar where I can accurately tell you that the new moon was officially last night at 11:26. That's when it officially was like locked in to permanent new moon state, and that it is in its very first day of invisible or non-visibility. It's shadowed by either itself. It's shadowed by itself and its relationship to the sun. And what is it's the moon. The moon sign is Virgo, and it's moving into Libra. Last night. So, as of today, it's now in Libra, the moon, which I'm not an astrologer. I have some conversational level knowledge about astrology. And I have appreciated when astrology enthusiasts have made statements that I can agree with that don't conflict with the rest of my personal understanding or philosophy of things, that I don't particularly actively pursue. an astrology thing. I often make friends with people who do. And so I often have friends who want to do my charts, as they like to say, and figure out where my astrological future may lie. But just in terms, why do I have this app if I'm explaining to you I'm not really into astrology? It's because while I love to say hello to the moon, I'm never really 100% sure what the heck is going on with it and what direction it's going in, and how much time I might have on any given day or evening before the next meaningful spiritual station of the moon. And arguably, I would say to you that if one approaches the moon as a spiritual ally, right? Some people out there might laugh at personifying the universe, but I'm not personifying it. I'm trying to pragmatically honor that at the center of my thesis of the universe, and at the center of anybody's thesis of the universe, should they care to explore enough, could be the honest statement that all things are made possible through fundamental consciousness, like an underlying fundamental consciousness of cosmic proportions. And we can go down a rabbit hole of trying to describe what that might be like, but we can also just work with nature and honor its aliveness and not worry about what its aliveness might technically be like, the way we don't usually stress out too much about the gory technical details of the other talking meatbags we engage with on the day-to-day here on the surface of our mother's womb, right? This living place that we call Earth, we radically ignore the amazingly weird, miraculous, magical brilliance that is the human apparatus. It is a living machine. It is, I think it would be fair to say, although that statement is also sort of technically incorrect, right? Because it's more than that. But it approaches just sort of one way of describing what the human body is. And it's all interrelated, even dare we say the inanimate objects, because they're not that inanimate, are they? But let's not get stuck on the argument, because that's the catch-22 about those debates. Flat Earth, round Earth, etc., at all. If there's a line that's been drawn and there's been postulates that pivot directly against each other, like willing jousters at a medieval jousting competition, whatever you call those, then you can guarantee that someone's profiteering on the conflict somehow. B, the conflict's not designed to be solvable, but rather infinitely frustratingly difficult or nearly impossible to clearly discern from an individual's limited perspective, especially if limited to the materialist framework. But that's a whole argument. We can go off on a tangent about that, I suppose. But the moon and nature and relating to it. Even if you just think it's a flat disk in the sky, look at it. It's effing beautiful. Also, I believe, and I could be wrong, and I'm not asking you to believe in my belief. I'm asking you to test your own experience against my testimony of experience and see if you have your own phenomena of it. If you relate to the moon as an aunt, like a divine, cosmic, feminine, complex, metaphysical being, spiritual entity that exists in more dimensions than just the visual, because let's remember and honor the clearly delineated fact, my friends, that if we're going to be materialist about things, then we are limiting ourselves and our knowledge and our understanding of everything going on around us to the 1% of the quote-unquote visible spectrum. And that if we reject everything else, we might be very well throwing out a lot of evidence for higher order phenomena and the very direct experience of experiencing said phenomena at these higher levels or other worldly levels than the purely materialist, filtered down, limited perspective of only the things we can perceive within the 1% of the visible light spectrum that our eyeballs are limited to perceiving. Now, that isn't to say that we don't have a natural and organic way of perceiving some of that other phenomena. And here's the cool part. Why do I encourage people to almost irrationally and without a system just approach a functional eye contact visiting relationship with important aspects of nature? Because we, my friends, are indeed phenomena, expressions of forms of nature itself. If life is a force that predates us and pre-exists us and is larger than us and is of deeper magnitude than we are as individuals, then we can also, understand and relate to the fact that we are it, or it is us, this divine force that brings life into existence. And that being said, no disrespect to any formal system that approaches a systematic analysis of the esoteric. The esoteric itself, that which is hidden from us, right? Whether hidden by fellow members of our human species for various nefarious and or virtuous reasons, or hidden from us for purely organic reasons, being, founded in the metaphysical limitations of our bodies as we allow them to function under our current socio-psychological programming. These things, these birthright level access channels, what's the right word there? The ability to tap into more than the 1%, and I don't mean the 1% of living people, but the ability to tap into more than 1% of the visible spectrum, the ability to tap into or pierce the seven veils, as other language would have it, is that tool set, because arguably it's a complex tool set with many modalities within it. It is, I think, at a certain level, organic, inherent, and as naturally inborn to any given human member of the human species as the ability to turn its face to the sun is natural and inborn to any sunflower. Now you put it in a room where it can't see the sun, it's just going to point straight up all the time at the lights that are feeding it light, isn't it? And what happens when you grow several generations of clones of sunflowers in controlled indoor laboratory conditions and then take one of their progeny as a seedling out into a natural field and let it grow once again en naturel? Does it no longer know how to find the sun? Or will it eventually kind of go, oh, there it is, and turn its head, its face towards the sun and follow it across the sky as sunflowers have done for millennia. As many flowers, not all flowers, right, do this, but many flowers in subtle, indirect ways or in big, overt, obvious ways, like the sunflower, will tilt or angulate their arrangement of sun-receiving petals and other, leaves to maximize angular exposure to the wave particle rays emanating from and landing on them, emanating from the sun and landing on them. So yeah. Now the thing is, I haven't done that experiment. I haven't checked to see if anyone's done that experiment, but I would venture to say, purely speculatively, that if you had a series of sunflowers, if you tried to conduct that experiment and had a series of generations of sunflower clones that were, raised and sort of encouraged to be maximally efficient in indoor controlled, top-down, situational lighting that doesn't move, and then took one of their offspring or one of the generations later clones of them out into a field, that over time it would probably adjust to the sun, right? It wouldn't just stare at straight up in the sky forever. I could be wrong though. Who knows? I wonder what the answer to that would be. But I would venture to say that theoretically, if we borrow that idea as an analogy for the human being, as an individual and as a species, collectively, one could say that our species has been living with a sort of mental gilded cage, or a collection of mental gilded cages that keep us distanced and or, quote, disconnected from nature as much as possible and as much as we're willing to tolerate, in order to keep us unaware of our own organic spiritual power. And of course, that's where the real revolution is, my friends. For those of you who may not know, my podcast is technically an underground spiritual revolutionary podcast. And I'm trying to draw people's attention towards abandoning all material tactics in terms of having a real revolution out there, and turning all of our attention inwards spiritually in order to engage the conflict of light versus dark within ourselves, primarily as individuals, or to begin with, and then secondarily as a species collectively. Secondarily doesn't mean less important than the first one, but rather, the more we heal ourselves, the better we will be able to heal each other. And by healing each other, we will collectively heal the whole species. But one must begin by becoming one's own healer, right? I would humbly suggest. And then finding people to work with in one's own life so that we can be in healthy friendships and healthy spiritual relationships and healthy business relationships and healthy working relationships and healthy personal relationships, in which not only do we communicate and share and get our shit together, but we're also actively everyone working towards spiritual, energetic healing of ourselves, each other, the community we are building in our face-to-face lives with each other, off-screen, To that end, I encourage you, no matter what level of spiritual lifestyle you are at, check yourself. Remember, when was the last time you really honored water? And you don't have to go to a beautiful, pristine waterfall lake somewhere and that's impossible to get to really honor water. When was the last time you made your shower spiritual? There's there's a teacher on Insight Timer whose name currently escapes me, but I'll dig it up whenever I get around doing a review and remix of this episode, which, knock on wood, is something I still wholeheartedly intend to do, that perhaps in the not-too-distant future, time and energy and collaborative facilitation by others will finally allow me to get on track with that shit. But put a pin in that for later. You can just she talks about this woman that I'm referencing, whose name I can't remember, and I was trying to stall to the point of almost stalling out to see if her name comes to me. I guess I could dig her up. Let's go. Okay, let's take a hot second, even though I was trying to get to this other thing and wrap it up, because I've been rambling for a hot 35 minutes and 54 seconds right this hot second right there. Almost right on the 355. Where would she be? She would be in my bookmarks. Insight Timer, by the way, is for those who have not heard me talk about it yet, it's in my, becoming an influencer by pretending to be an influencer and just telling you about the shit I use in terms of doing cool stuff, using my thermonuclear phone cancer-causing communications supercomputer, because they're not thermonuclear, but they might as well be, because they're fucking irradiating us like crazy. But that's a whole nother episode, right? Let's talk about that later. This app is the app that I would immediately recommend. Genuinely, wholeheartedly, I use it daily. Is this her? She's someone who's meditating. This may or may not. No, I don't think that is. Let me back out and see about, where do I have bookmarks? No, my teachers, yes. I think I should, unless she's changed it, recognize her profile picture. But yeah, out of all the available apps out there, on either the Apple Store or the Google Store, and there's some other platforms currently, and in the recent past, this has been my number one recommendation. There I see, as I vamp for time while I scroll for this artist's name, this meditation teacher's name, that there are many new meditation timers, and some other timers that I've previously checked out have actually revamped their interfaces and such. Oh, it's Sarah Blondin, 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 I believe. Let's see her. Maybe I'm wrong. Where is it? Maybe this isn't her. Was it Making Things Sacred? Making Your Life Sacred? I'm trying to find. I think this is the artist. Making Your Life Sacred. Sarah Blondin. On Insight Timer. If you have Insight Timer, look up this meditation. It's one that I thoroughly enjoy and totally endorse and hit thumbs up on and very much cherish and love returning to. But yeah, what was I talking about? Oh, I also was, to wrap up that other thought, I fully intend to, in the not too distant future, do like a product review episode where my top 6 meditation apps on the multi-market. The app multi-market apps. It's 11:11. Ding, ding, ding. I'm way too far away from my bell. It's way over there. And of course I knocked the thing over. Make-A-Wish, folks. Actually, let's talk about that. intention and manifesting, is that real? Or is it just self-delusional? I totally just swiped away a thing I wanted to look at. Is that totally self-delusional, crazy new age, happy think, right? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I can really comically just sort of laugh at myself and give you, a sort of comical answer and or a serious answer. But let me find what I was looking at again. Boom, there it is. Something I wish I had already done a podcast about, but I haven't had the chance to. And then for reals, I'm going to wrap it up because we're at 40 minutes. And that's that this last Friday the 13th, which happened to be a full moon, a harvest moon, I believe the last of the year in terms of harvest moons. I could be incorrect, I could be wrong about that. But it was a beautiful moon, and I was feeling it. I was feeling that, extra dose of energy from that gorgeous, brilliant light that even against the urban sprawl and lighting pollution thereof, it was still just gorgeous to look at. And I had an experience with a group of people, which is a new group of people that I was being introduced to, that in many ways we all agreed and felt as we sat around in the evening, taking time to away from being inside a bit, because it was a bit warm, so we would all come out and chit-chat. And also it was a mixed company group, some of which were cigarette smokers, and so there were cigarette breaks that turned into just let's just continue the discussion out here because it's much more pleasant out here than it is inside. And we were at an industrial sort of live-work space, which is awesome, and that I kind of admire. I admire people who take their life to that level and really commit to living with their art in such a way that their entire professional space is their home and their home is their professional space. Some people find that insane. I could totally do that. But I digress. This evening and this creative meeting that we gathered to was in that simple, genuinely organic way that you can just chuck it up to coincidence and say you're just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, dude. I felt was very magical. And everyone at that meeting spoke of manifesting, of yearning for assembling the right combination of people willing to engage in a collaborative, ego-free process that would evolve into its own methodology of creating new entertainment art. So each of us in our own way was primed artistically and spiritually for that meeting. And each of us in our own way, on our own path, had dabbled and experimented with, quote, spiritual or magical, quote unquote, bunny ears on each of those words, practices of evoking or evocative manifestation. In other words, trying to bring into existence or trying to align oneself, which might be better language, into existence, align oneself with that better choice or preferred combination of circumstances. And it's interesting because, duality, non-duality constantly coexist. So we must always, especially in the creative arts and in the healing arts, in the spiritual arts, we are almost forced to talk about things that seem almost self-juxtaposed with other things within our own collection of language. But a very wise thing that one of these people shared with me on that Friday the 13th, and again in revisiting the story, that story that he had to tell in days since, is that someone very wisely consoled him, gave him the guidance of that goes like the following: stop trying to force things to happen and allow the future to come to you and allow it to be in the shape that you want. I think I'm adding to that, but the center part is like to really welcome the future coming to you. And as I'm processing what he shared with me as far as like a bit of wisdom that was meaningful in his life, and coupling it with the practices as we might all commonly know or discover them on the internet, known as manifesting. And of course, there's deeper research to be had there, right? The internet's just hand dandy. You can't continue to not know what someone else is talking about when you're sitting right there on a supercomputer with a supercomputer in your pocket and another supercomputer on your desktop. But I digress. We also are here to help each other wrap our brains, bring to each other's attention that which we are not aware of and do not know much about. So these folks, these artists, have been developing their own massive collaborative project, and they've been refining and discerning through experiment and through trial and error, refining the idea or the sort of what they would like to achieve through manifesting with the right group of other collaborators. And myself and two other people found ourselves drawn into this collective to sort of become participants in it. And while it's in no way, shape, or form anything we predicted, quote unquote, it is everything we sort of asked for in our dream wish, in our pipe dreaming of it, according to everyone's testimony, it's like this. I couldn't ask for anything more perfectly aligned than this. But a diverse group of artists, each of which who dabble in various other forms of art, and have enthusiastic friends that span the spectrum of other arts, right? In between us all. But I digress. One of the things that I worked with, sort of almost passive-aggressively, I'll be honest with you, and that I propose to you, dear friends, I will be bringing into sharper focus as time goes on and trying to work more specifically with, is what some call moon magic or moon manifesting or manifesting magic, calling upon the moon as your facilitator or as one's spiritual ally. The moon, of course, is revered as a goddess in many cultures, and there's like a triptych of goddesses that are encodified in the 3 moon phase symbols. And we can go and do a whole episode on that. But I just wanted to get to my actual point today and talk about a simple starter kit new moon practice that one can do. And that's simply to take a moment today or tomorrow, and even though technically the new moon was yesterday, last night officially, tonight is sort of the continuation of it. It isn't an on-off state, right? It's not like someone is turning off a lamp up there and then turning it back on. And so it all sort of ebbs and flows and grows in organic, what's the term? Not digital, but analog algorithms of growth. So get out there, take a look at the moon, and the new moon being the right time to plant seeds, for example. As you sit there, and if you can figure out using a moon app, there's also other moon apps that will tell you exactly when the moon comes up. And I don't know, this one doesn't specifically share. Oh yeah, moon. I think it says moon 9/29/2019, 11:20. I would imagine that's really late. That's Pacific time, so that's really late. I don't know if I'm gonna go out there, but maybe really early in the morning tomorrow, if you're listening to this on the day of. and you'll probably miss it. You'll skip a whole, multi-moon phase cycle. But start connecting to the moon. Start saying hello to the moon. And on new moons, as you might today, even if you don't take a moment to go outside, but even if you only take a moment to go outside in the dusk evening time, before bed, just go outside and look at the sky, look at the horizon, get familiar with what goes on, make the time to see your astrological, not because I believe in astrology, but because they are themselves real things out there, and they are themselves parts of nature. Get to know them a little bit better, and make a moment to plant mental seeds. If you're into growing your own food, find out what's great to plant right now this late in the season. And if there isn't anything, then obviously, go metaphorical with it and plant new project seeds, new adventure seeds, the seeds of a new set of habits you'd like to develop, etc. And here's a simple thing. Both at new moon and full moon, you can write manifesting intentions down. If it's something new and wholesome that you're trying to create or build, write it in a journal, and make sure you date it, and sort of close it off by giving it space in the journal and not using it for any other words. So let your intention that you create on a given new moon, for example, let's say you want to get back to the gym, to use a really generic example, because you still got that gym membership and it's almost New Year's and you're like, fuck man, I don't want it to be New Year's and me being annoyed about that gym membership I signed up for, and also heading into a New Year's where I'm not going to the gym. Right now, this new moon, and even if it's not till tomorrow night and you missed it, whatever, and if you missed the whole new moon, well, at the very first next station, right, do it in hindsight. Call upon the previous new moon. You get to the first quarter and be like, hey, first quarter moon, what's up? I totally meant to ask for this help at the last new moon, and I wonder if we can throw it in now, right? Do it, and then try to nail it the next new moon. So if it's something new that you want to build or create or sustain, write it down in a journal, give it its own space on a page. Don't write anything on that same page face. Turn the page when you're done, and look. Take a moment to meditate by looking at the new blank page. If you've got a backyard or access to a safe outdoor space, try to do this at early dusk or early evening, or early morning if you're an early riser. Sometimes early morning. I'm not sure if this time of year is the right time. I'm not pretending to be an authoritative specialist on this. I'm telling you, I've dabbled, and there's something magical there that makes me feel good, and that seems to, because mind you, faith without action is empty and meaningless, right? That's true in the Christian faith. It's true in the non-Christian faith. It's true with any practice. Faith is totally misused. The word is misapplied nowadays by organized religion and those enthusiastically trying to maintain the status quo of organized religion. But we'll put a pin and make that a whole other episode someday. But let's scroll back. There is an organic meaning of the term faith, and we'll make that another episode, or make it to the duality of that particular episode. So have faith in nature. Have faith that taking time to honor that there is a cycle to life, and that there is a cycle to ourselves, that our bodies and our minds might operate in cycles. Why is that so weird to think that it might be true? We are living, talking extensions of nature itself, right, folks? So if it's something you're trying to get rid of, to wrap things up here, you can go to that extra magical step of writing it down on a safe, clean, non-toxic piece of paper that doesn't have lots of gloss or wax or shit on it, and then burn it in a safe manner. Don't use a whole page. Don't burn a whole effing page. Don't light your curtains on fire. Don't fucking sue me for giving this, sharing this idea on my podcast. Take responsibility and be prepared. Remember, the best initial way to put out a fire is to have water and a rag and to douse the rag in water and put it on the burning thing. Especially if it's a small object or a small bit of paper. It is, don't throw the water at the thing, but surround that which is burning with moisture and a very well-soaked thing. And also, I can do some research. Figure out how to be safe around candles and fire. Never leave candles burning unattended, folks, because you never know. I've literally seen glassware get too hot and split, and worst case scenario, that'll topple over and cause something, the next level of something gets too hot and catches on fire. So knock on wood, you don't want any of that. But if you burn the thing that you visualize that you're working on, I should do this. I've literally never done this. I've contemplated doing this 1,000 times. I should probably do it today/tonight. And really kick the fucking bucket on cigarettes, right? Write down cigarettes or a complete sentence like, I really want to fully and completely abdicate that cigarette smoking habit. Just let it go, get rid of it, never need it again. And then meditate with it, sit with it, stare at that sentence that you wrote or that word that you wrote, and forgive it. Let it go. And then, spend some time working that. Whatever that means to internally do the spiritual, energetic work of forgiving a thing and letting it go, do that. Don't just blip right past that in a hot second, but sit with that mental effort. Struggle with it. Figure out what it means to do that. Ask yourself, what does it mean to forgive this idea, this word, this person, this sentence, this habit, this addiction, whatever it is? And then burn it, and use the act of burning it to really, really, really commit to letting it go. Just like the act of putting it in a book, and if it's something you're trying to build, trying to create or attract as opposed to reject, you're putting it in the book and you're keeping that book, and that book you will only, pick a book. I would personally encourage, if you've never done this before and you're starting this off new for the first time, pick a book that you're going to dedicate to that idea of manifesting work. So friends, that's something I've dabbled with and that I've found, curiously, to, I don't know, you can call it a coincidence or you can call it things with some effort. Because like I said, faith without action. And I'm not talking, the action isn't the burning or the writing down. The action is then putting yourself out there, making yourself prepared, meditating more, eating healthier. Some of them are kind of obvious things, but we really got to put that. And mental work, the mental energetic work of saying, I am worthy of this energetically. I elevate myself to this thing that I've asked the universe, to manifest for me. I elevate myself to worthiness through the work of forgiveness and transmutation of, my past sins, etc., my failings, my flaws, my limitations. And by trying to get out there and do helpful works, good works, as it were, out there in the real world that help build or position you to be, available to the universe, bringing that which you've asked for into existence. Now we can go and spend a whole other hour talking about how all the ways that you could try to do this and it won't work. You can't ask for the universe to give you $1 million out of the blue. No matter how many candles you burn, it's not going to happen. You have to get out there and engage in commerce, unfortunately, believe it or not. One weird, challenging lesson I had to sort of beat myself into trying a different, relenting on trying to constantly vilify it. And that is that all things are energy, and that includes money. Money isn't a physical object in the world. And let me rephrase that. All physical objects in the world are, in fact, energy condensed into their physicality, right? So money is no different. if we vilify it, if we treat it like a bad guy, it may become a toxic thing in our lives. If we realize that the corruption we associate with money is as much other people and how they use money, we can perhaps realign ourselves to treat money as an ally and to attract it more and more in our lives. That's a theory I'd love to get out there and test, right? Because it makes sense to me in terms of all the things I've dabbled with. But I'm not an authority. I'm not trying to sell a book like, look at me, I'm rich and famous because I manifested this in my life. I'm like, hey, I'm just an ordinary guy that has questioned everything and really, really tried earnestly to figure out what all the hubbub is with everybody's different theories about the universe and what I'm going to welcome in to my personal model of what I believe is going on. But as always, friends, I could ramble on for days about it, right? And remember, folks, I could be wrong. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you to join me on a journey of exploring it. To that end, I want to share with you some exciting news. That group of people that I've recently met, I think, I could be wrong, nothing official has been officially officialed yet, but I think they're going to be down to maybe joining me as occasional guests on the podcast. So keep your fingers crossed, my dear devoted listeners, and anybody new who's joining for the first time and checking out this episode before new ones land. I hope to go through the process of officially inviting them and arranging to get them to appear on the podcast in the not too distant future. But yeah, and also, things, new pokers are on the fire, new things are being juggled, and new efforts are being made towards being on the air a little bit more on the regular, and towards really kind of elevating all the projects I'm involved in to their next most potent level possible. So, as always, my friends, thank you for joining me. Your support is deeply appreciated. Please get out there on the interwebs, show your appreciation for this weird, crazy, rambling podcast project of mine, and some of the other things that I do by following me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Instagram and Facebook are the strongest ones. Twitter is a very passive one for me, but whatevs, folks. Any number is a number that will help find more ears to be part of the audience. And as always, I leave you with this thought, friends. We are here to have a shared experience, and we all want to have the most profound and beautiful and divine and, dare I say it, groovy experience. And it won't happen on its own just by wishing for it, but we do have natural abilities that one might call, the power of the mind to not over matter, rather, but to engage with matter. And I hope that as we journey forth, we get to explore and tinker and experiment in a safe and productive way, ways that we can all bring to the table elevation of energy frequencies and deeper and more profound spiritual inner awareness for ourselves or each other, the communities we're all a part of, and the species at all. Until next time, this has been your humble yet rambly host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.
And that is what I've got to say about that. As always, thank you kindly for listening. This has been the Almost Daily Zencast with your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Until next time, may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart.